From Field Pass Hockey Southern Command, this is the Inside the SPHL podcast. Here is your host, James Hayes.
Welcome to this week's episode of Inside the SPHL. Can you believe it? Hockey is going to start this week. We are in the week of hockey. The wait is finally over. I'm pumped about it. I hope you're pumped about it. We got a big episode for you today. We're going to go give you a season preview. We're going to go over each team with a fine-tooth comb and give some expert predictions. Well, I'm not the expert, but anyways, we're going to kind of give you some insight into what to look into this season to the best of our abilities. And of course, as always, I got to bring somebody on that's much smarter than me and can elaborate on these points a lot better. This week, I'm bringing on a longtime Field Pass guy. He has been covering the Macon Mayhem for back to the Sin Bin days, and he is the boss of the SPHL team here at Field Pass. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the show, Brad Harrison. Brad, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I think you've got the wrong guy when you said you're bringing the smart people on here, though, but glad to be here. Glad to, it's a balmy 80 degrees here in the daytime here in Central Georgia, and it's probably about the same in a lot of other places in the SPHL, but here we go. It's time to start the season. It's hard to believe this Thursday we'll be dropping the puck and getting going.
Yeah. It's actually kind of nice here in Alabama today. It was we will only hit the low 70s tomorrow, a high of 57. It's hockey weather finally. I think Alabama got the message.
Yeah, well, it's a good diversion for a lot of people who follow another sport in that state right now. Right. I think I saw that earlier this week that the Ice Bears very wisely were promoting their Tennessee Volunteer all-vol jerseys. I think they're called. On dash options. So it was a good play by the Ice Bears to latch onto that. That's for sure.
Yeah, they're doing all vol night for opening night in Knoxville. So that's kind of cool. They all planned it out. But yeah, so maybe does that mean that hell froze over because Tennessee beat Alabama? Is that why it's colder here?
First time since 06, that's for sure. So yeah.
That was exciting. But yeah, we're not here to talk about football. Nope. Everybody wants to listen to hockey, right? Or listen to hockey talk. Nope. But so like I said, we're going to talk – everybody, we're going to try to give these guys some insight, and we're just going to go through the league and let's jump right into it, man. Let's start with the Bobcats, the Vermilion County Bobcats. So last year they broke an SPHL record that they don't want to be known for, and they went 5-46-5, got 15 points. That's the record. Not enough wins, not enough points. They are the kings now of that. The record was actually broke twice, but so there's a new second place team too. But because the Mayhem, because it used to be 11 points, and the Mayhem they finished or not 11. It used to be 27 points, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I'm making things up. This is why I bring other people on. We're not going to talk about that. Erase that from your mind, people. I'm not editing it out. Anyways, the Bobcats missed the playoffs. They got off to a really rough start last year. They lost their first 10 before finally getting a shootout win against Peoria. And then towards the end of the season, the head coach, he stepped away from the team for the final 2 weekends, which wasn't all bad because David Ayers made his appearance back in the game, and he coached the team for the last 2 weekends. So that was pretty cool for Bobcat fans to see. And then just all in all, it was kind of a rough season. Their leading scorer was Mitch Atkins. He had 19 points, 5 goals, 14 assists. Houston Wilson followed that up. You guys voted him the fan favorite last year, if you all remember. So a lot of you should remember that name. When it came to their goals for, they were the worst in the league. They had 83 goals, and that wasn't even close. They were 40 goals less than the next team in line. They had 267 goals against, another league worst. Their power play, 6.8%. Guess what? League worst. Penalty kill, 71.2%. League worst, but it wasn't bad. There was a lot of teams in that 71% area. When we look into their acquisitions, their roster is not we tried to find a lot of things. We found 2 players. They got Matt O'Shaughnessy and Justin Portillo. Those are the 2 names that I see locked in right now. I know they have a training camp going on, so they have more players. They just haven't released that roster yet. So don't panic, Bobcat fans. Don't panic. There is a team. They're on the ice practicing. They'll be there. And then and that's about it. So Where do you see them going this year, Brad? What do you see? I mean, they can only go up, right?
Yeah. You're right. They can only go up, and I think, because they obviously, and as is the case this year, they had some off-ice issues early on with the condition of the ice being ready to go. And if you've read the headlines here recently, there have been some other things about the back and forth of the arena. But contrary to what people think, I mean, I know there is the doomsday scenario of, oh my gosh, are they going to even have a season? I mean, I think they'll play, but there could be some challenges with certain things at the arena. But I think yes, there will. I would be stunned if there is not a season this year for the Bobcats. So I don't think that's the thing. But I think the biggest thing is, I mean, and obviously hinges on what we find out later this week, because we're recording this podcast early in the week, and teams have to release their teams have to release their rosters on Wednesday. So by that time, depending on when you're tuning in on the podcast, they may release more details. But the big key for the Bobcats would be if you can bring back some of those guys that kind of went through that tough spell last year, that could help them. That goes back to your whole thing about, going through like a shared sacrifice or a shared moment. So I think if you have guys who went through that together and they're part of the core this year, that could be a big help to them to kind of form bond and see what you can do with that. But obviously the challenge that Vermilion County has is that, just to do the geographics to cut down travel, the three teams that they will play the most, one is the defending President's Cup champion Peoria, and the other is Quad City, who was in the semifinals last year. So,
it's not going to be an easy road.
The show.
It's not going to be an easy road. I also forgot to mention they got a new head coach in TJ Sarcona,
right.
And my talks with the organization, they're really excited to bring him in, and they're thinking they're looking for big things to come from him, and also kind of touching back on the issues, all those headlines and everything that came out in this past week. Everything that I've been told is there's no doubt that they're going to have a season, and I mean. So I don't see why anybody should worry about that. I mean, they're obviously practicing on that ice right now. So why wouldn't that ice be ready before then? I know there was another report saying that they were going to be out of Danville, and none of that is confirmed. It's all just rumor mill stuff. And so I'm just going to leave that at that. And I guess my opinion on the Bobcats coming into this season is I think they are going to improve. I mean, like I said, there's only one way to go, and that's up from here. Do I think they're going to be a playoff team? I don't know. I feel like the answer is no. There's a lot of good teams keeping a lot of their rosters pretty much intact this year. They're going to look the same. It's going to be tough. And like you said, Peoria and Quad City that's a blunt of their schedule. And so I don't know. We'll know this weekend what kind of team they are whenever they take on the Bulls, and that'll kind of give us an idea, but like I said, for now, I don't feel like they're going to make the playoffs, but hey, we'll see. What do you think on that? You think playoff team?
I think they'll fall short, but I think it will be an improvement.
Yeah. All right. So that's that for the Bobcats. We'll move on to the next team. We're working bottom up, if you haven't noticed, but it's the Macon Mayhem, a team you know all too well. They last year they had a record of 10-4-3-3, 26 points, 10th in the league. They missed the playoffs by 29 points. In the offseason, it was announced that not in the offseason. Last season, it was announced before the season that Coach Kerr was not going to return to the team. Desjardins stepped in. They had a rough start to the season as well. They lost 12 games. They've never really recovered, but they do have one positive note. They had a winning record against the Birmingham Bulls. And so, I mean, that's one thing. That season series, for some reason, that team got the best of the Bulls. The leading scorer was Zach Lambrick. He had 31 points, 18 goals, 13 assists. Then you had Scott Koch following right behind, 30 points, 15 and 15 goals and assists. They were 10th in the league with 123 goals for. They were also 10th in the league with goals against at 250. The power play, 10th in the league, 14.1%. And the penalty kill was at 76.3. They were 9th in the league. So they were a little better than their rankings there. Their key acquisitions, and I'll probably lean on you a little bit. I'll say what I got on here, but I know they brought it. Caleb Cameron's back. I know everybody loves the guy, brings a lot of energy to the team. Macon's getting David Nippert, a guy that I knew pretty well, got to know pretty well in Birmingham last year. He's another energy guy, 2 veteran guys that can kind of help the rebuild of the Mayhem, this new look Mayhem. Dylan Kelly, to the best of my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they lost him in net, right?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
he was one of the guys who last year was loaned to the ECHL, and he never came back.
Which
was great for Dylan Kelly. And that's one thing I think last year I pointed out multiple times is that, the fact the fact when you have a goalie who you had on your roster who was called up, that says a lot about, number one, the recruitment that was going on, but also the fact that the ability of the guys you had. So obviously I think a big key this year for Macon with the guys in net is going to be how your defensive pairs play in front of them, because this year, earlier this week during camp, they picked up a third goalie. So they had Michael Stiliadis, who was with the team last year in net, and then Gabe Mowat Hill, who was in, I believe it was the Gladiators. He was in the ECHL camp. So and then also in the off season, they also had signed another girl like Spencer Kozlowski as well. So they have, that's going to be the combo between that and the guys in defense is going to be key to helping. They signed Yuri Hajda in the early summer as a guy they brought in Kyle Soper has some defense experience. They brought him back, and then Brian Kerrigan as well, and then Troy Murray, who and a new guy they brought in last year in the office was Troy Murray, who he was a guy that I believe actually played for Coach Nieder in Vermilion County last year. He played for Vermilion County and Pensacola. So that familiarity should obviously help in that regard.
Yeah, and I also forgot to mention another coaching change there. Nick Niedert, who was the Bobcats coach, is now
and
the
funny
Mayhem
story
coach.
about that is Nick Nieder literally began his career in goalie in Macon with the Macon Tracks. So it's kind of a neat. In fact, it's like he told me a few days ago. It's like in his coach's office, it's like, this is where I was told I was being. They were going to keep me for a little bit, and it's also where I was told I was getting cut. So he's like, so it's kind of a full circle type thing.
That's
type
awesome.
thing for him. So it's kind of a big story with that.
So what are your expectations for that team this year?
I think they'll obviously challenge a lot more for the postseason than they did last year. And I think also, I think you got to be realistic that, you've got, because last year was a straight up expansion team because the team you had the year before, you're never going to see talent
right
like that in one place again. So it was an expansion team last year, and it looked like at the time just because you had so many guys that did not have SPHL experience. So when you've got the guys like Nigel Slade, Brian Kerrigan, and Caleb Cameron's played a little more years than those guys, but when you have so many guys that have gained that year experience on this level, that's going to do nothing but help you out. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I think they're going to challenge for a playoff spot a lot better than they did last year. I'm still not sold. Another team is still a new team, and like you said, that they're rebuilding. So I'm not going to fully commit to saying that they're going to move in, which is going to go. And all these opinions are going to be contradicted with the next team we go over, but that I have. But anyways, that's where I'm at. I think I won't be surprised if Macon makes it into the playoffs. But I also won't be surprised if they miss it. But I don't think they're going to be 29 points out. I don't think it's going to be that bad.
Right.
So yeah, that's that about covers that on the Mayhem. So next up, we'll go to a team that I cover pretty throughout the season, in the Birmingham Bulls. They had a rough season last year. They went 18, 32, 5-1, got 9th in the league. They missed the playoffs by 13 points. They just started the season off on the wrong foot last year. They dropped their first 4 games, and then they finally they got a wild shootout victory against Roanoke, and that's kind of when they got their first win. It was just a back and forth game, 7-6. I'll never forget that game. And they ended up finishing October only winning 1 game. That's not the way you want to start it out. November didn't go well. The losses really started to pile up, and they went on an 8-game losing streak. And then they brought in Kevin Kerr who was in Macon. They brought him in as an assistant to try to help and change. A coach can only do so much. Having an assistant coach is key, and the experience that he brought was going to change things. it didn't turn the season right around, but you could see difference on the team, and it left a lot of excitement, I think, for the fans. Anyways, the leading scorer last year was Carson Rose, a rookie. He had 41 points, 24 goals, 17 assists in 50 games. He was followed by another rookie, the one that they traded. They traded Casey Kolcheski to the Ice Bears and picked up Fletcher from him, and he finished the season with 41 points, 13 goals, 27 assists. All in all, the Bulls only came up with 144 goals, put them 9th in the league overall. At the end of the year, they allowed 198 goals, put them 2 spots away from the bottom, also known as 10th or 9th. I mean, sorry, not 10th. I can't even do math today. I don't know why people listen to me on here. Anyways, their power play was only effective 14.7% of the time, another 9th place ranking. The penalty kill was the worst in the league at 76.1%. Just rough all around. So their key pickups this year, in my opinion, on top of the guys they brought back, they have their core back in Mike Davis. He's coming back, the captain. I assume he's going to be captain again. But they picked up Stefan Timofeyev from Knoxville, and a lot of you guys remember him from last year. He did that Michigan goal. I mean, the dude's just got hands. He's a threat to score every time he has it. And they also managed to steal away the Knoxville captain in Stefan Brucato. And so there's another veteran coming in, and that's a big sign. Like you said, that's a huge signing, bringing him in. They lost. I hate to be nasty, but I don't feel like they lost a whole lot. I mean, they lost David Nippard, but they didn't necessarily lose a whole lot of stuff. A lot of people are going to miss, but they picked up Pelnick on defense. They're beefing up their defense. And they picked up Taylor Brearley. I know I just screwed that name up. I asked that name about 3 or 4 times. But anyways, he's a bulky defenseman. And so they're beefing up their defense there. And that's kind of where they're at. You can see the direction they're going in there. And it's almost like a youth movement when you look at all the signings on this team. They're bringing a lot of guys in, but there are a lot of skill players. If you look at where they play, how they played in college or how they played before, this team's going to look a lot different than the year before. And it's kind of what they looked like probably, I would say, the last 3 weeks of the year last year. They kind of freed their game up.
Right.
And they started scoring more goals and just but the problem was the defense just wasn't there. And it looks like that has been addressed. So I guess give me your take on where you think Birmingham's going this year, and then I'll finish my thought.
I think I think they're definitely a playoff team. I think the Mercado signing really raises your eyebrows. It really raises it's almost like a raise. I mean, I think if you're a Birmingham fan, you've got to be excited because they're showing a commitment to getting guys to help them win. These aren't just piecemeal guys. So and I think at times last year it got to a point probably where you knew they weren't going to make the playoffs. I mean, how much last season was almost a extended evaluation for, especially with Kerr as well. They offered his insight to, obviously he's part of the coaching staff. He's not the final say so there, but I think they had time to figure out who really, because I think last year was more of we're trying to fit square pegs. If you're really going to change your identity, you had to do with what you had and just try to fit square pegs into a round hole. Right. Now I think they have more time to figure out who are guys we want, who are going to fit into what we need sometimes, because it's like the old adage of, especially in single A level hockey, fans get attached to players and they get mad. Well, why'd you go and so and so? But it's just the whole thing of, you're not looking for the best players, you're looking for the right players. So I think every team in this league has had cases where this guy's a great player, but you need the right fit sometimes. So I think that's where Birmingham is they're looking for guys who are going to be the right fit, because I think it took some guts for them as a franchise, public perception, to let go of Casey Kulzicki there. That's for sure. I mean, the guy's a fan favorite who, to the core, was Birmingham hockey. So, I mean, it was a clear thing of we appreciate guys for how they've meant they're a franchise, but but I think it was also a neat thing for him too. He got traded, but he has a President's Cup now too.
Yeah, so ended up in Peoria.
It's hard to be mad as a Bulls fan to say, we hate the guy's not here, but
Yeah.
Happy for him that he got a championship.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, a good player is not always a good fit on certain rosters. So I mean, a player can go and shine somewhere else and just not, and then show up on a different roster and not be a good fit. So I mean, not to say that any of these guys that, whenever I said I don't feel like they lost anybody, I just mean that I don't think they lost anybody that would impact the roster in a positive way this year. But those guys can go out like Houston Wilson. He was one of the leading scorers for the Bobcats, and he started the season with the Bulls. He fits better there. Right. So anyways, that about sums up the Bulls. Like I guess I got to finish my take. So I do also think they're going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to be right in the mix. I don't know where they're going to be at. I don't know whose spot they're going to take and who's going to miss out. But I think they're going to definitely be in the mix, and I would be surprised if they do not make the playoffs this year, because just the change in culture and the things that I started seeing towards the end of last year, like we talked about, I think things are looking up in Birmingham, and the rebuild, so to speak, is coming to a close. But moving on from that, next up will be the Evansville Thunderbolts. We're into playoff teams now, so they had a decent season, 38-26-2, seventh in the league. They got swept by Huntsville in the first round of the playoffs. They got off to a really hot start last year. They only lost once in October. They had a subpar November, and then the rest of the season was just kind of the same. If you break their schedule down last year month by month, they were floating right around 500, which is pretty much where they ended up. Obviously they stayed ahead of it at 38-26, but they just never really found that consistency and put together a lot of wins at once. Their leading scorer was the former Rookie of the Year, Austin Plevy. He had 49 points, 13 goals, 36 assists. Cameron Cook was right on hot on his tails at 37 points, 17 goals, 20 assists. They were ninth in the league with goals for at 162, fifth in the league at goals against, which is a big shout out to that defense and Brian Billett at 155 goals. Their power play was eighth in the league at 16.2%, seventh in the league on the penalty kill at 81.8%. So it wasn't super great. As of right now, this is another team that I haven't seen their full roster. They're just like the Bobcats, and by the time you guys listen to this, it'll probably be out.
And that's honestly not surprising, because anyone who has followed Jeff Best during his career in Pensacola and Fayetteville, Jeff Best, I don't know how often he goes to Vegas, but he'd make a pretty good card player, because he always keeps his cards close to the vest in the offseason. He doesn't have much stuff out there. So I know if you read the social media during the offseason, I know there were some Evansville fans that have lost their mind, like, oh my gosh, we're not signing anybody.
Yeah, but, do we have a team?
Yeah, but there's a method to the madness of what Jeff Best does, and there's a reason why he has success everywhere he's been in this league, and Evansville has been no different.
Yeah, and I mean, they do have, as I say, they do have. I did see Zane Steves. He was the backup in Huntsville, or I guess 1B in Huntsville. I don't know. Vorva was the solid starter there, but so he was there. I don't know if he's going to back up if Billett's coming back. Billett's getting up there in hockey years, but I mean, he had an outstanding season last year. Like I said, he was one of the reasons they were fifth in the league in goals against. He carried that team. Plevy, you'd like to assume he's coming back. He hasn't been in the league too long. I'm just going off with the assumption that a lot of this core is going to stay together that we've seen last year, and that's what I'm going to roll with. And like I said, by the time you guys listen to this, I'm sure the roster is going to be out, but we're recording a little bit early, and that's all right. But kind of give me your take on what you think with Evans. What's going to happen with Evansville this year?
I think whether or not Austin Plevy comes back, it's going to be a key, So I think if this team has Austin Plevy on it, you're going to be in good shape, and you're going to have a chance to score a lot of goals. I think the biggest thing, and again, going back to what we talked about with Vermilion County, is you do have a way of schedule up there a little bit. So I think the big key for them is, if you can't get that 1 or 2 spot, you come in, you can be mid-pack going to the postseason and get a decent draw.
Right. And so you thinking playoff team or bubble team?
Absolutely so. Yeah, I think they're probably a 4 postseason team.
I can see, if the raw, like I'm with you, if Cameron Cook's back, if Plevy's back, if the goaltending's solid, I mean, I don't see why this team's not a playoff team again next year, but you never know. You never know. I mean, if I'm saying Birmingham is in, that means somebody's got to be out. So, right. But I feel like Evansville is going to be right there in the mix at the end of the year, and it actually will surprise me if they're not in the playoffs. Let's put it that way. But
I agree on that.
So we got anything else on it? I think that covers them pretty well. And then so next up, we will talk about the Pensacola Ice Flyers. So they after their championship season, they came into this year with a whole new look team because nobody's teams looked the same after the COVID season where there was only 5 teams. And a lot of the guys in Peoria were down there in Pensacola, and then a bunch of ECHL talent, just like the rest of the league. But anyways, so last year they went 31-19, 5-1, 68 points, got 6th in the league. They ended up losing to Peoria 2-1 in the first round, and they didn't even really get a home game in the playoffs. I feel like I need to mention that. They ended up playing that one in Birmingham, and but they gave Peoria a fight. There was a lot of goals scored in that series.
Yeah.
But they gave them a fight. They started out the season playing a lot of Alabama teams with the way that the schedule was set up. And so they headed into January and they were just floating right above 500, but they were still a middle of the pack team. They weren't down there because the 3 bad teams pretty much stayed bad all season long. They really turned things up in March and solidified themselves as a playoff contender. They headed into the playoffs on red hot on a 4-game win streak. And it just, like I said, they met Peoria, and everybody that met Peoria, no matter how it went, ended up losing in the playoffs, obviously. But there was 19 goals, as I said, in those first 2 games. There was 19 total goals, and I mean that was a heck of a series. And they're another team. Their leading scorer was a rookie, and Whelan Parrish. He had 57 points, 15 goals, 42 assists. All about passing the puck is what he was about. And then Brendan Blazic was right behind him with 31 goals. He was the leading goal scorer, I guess I should say. He had 46 points total. They were 6th in the league with goals for at 189, 164 goals against, put him 7th in the league. The power play was outstanding on this team. They had one of the best power plays in the league at a 24%. As I said, 2nd in the league. The penalty kill wasn't so great, which is probably where some of their struggles came. They were at 81.7. They were 8th in the league there. They're bringing back, a lot of these guys from last year that were impact players. They're bringing back Parrish. They're bringing back Garrett Milan. They're bringing back Malik Johnson. On their roster as of now, I don't see Blazic and I don't see Marcus Russell. Doesn't mean they're not going to be there. As we said, the rosters don't have to be released as the time that we're recording this. But Pensacola, they were just a solid team all year last year, and I don't look to see them really change a lot this year unless something crazy happens. What's your take on them heading into this season?
Well, yeah, I think I think last year you kind of saw the impact of Jake Kupski not being there, because Kupski, even before the COVID year, was a solid goaltender for Pensacola. And he was one of those guys where, he's not going to Jake Kupski wasn't going to dominate you every night, but he was one of those guys, as making fans get heartburn hearing this, is that from the President's Cup Finals in the COVID year, is he's a guy that if he gets on a 3-game streak, he's tough. And there's a reason why Jake Kupski is still not being released in the East Coast Hockey League. So, I think, they had, you got a guy like they hadn't, you need a shutdown goalie like Kupski. And I think guys like Christian Pavlis have been solid for them, but just not on that level. So I think they've got goalies who can get the job done. But I think for them to take a bit of a next step to be among the top 2 to 3, you need to just a little bit more of a shove. Like I said, I think they're a postseason team, but you just need that one X factor in goal.
Yeah.
But anyone who follows the SPHL knows that they've got one of the more successful coaches in this league down there behind the bench. So
right.
End of the day, he's going to have his guys ready when it matters. You look back in the last year that Pensacola put the fear of God into Peoria, and that was not the first time in the postseason that Pensacola either gave Peoria fits or worse.
Yeah.
I mean, Peoria fans were probably hearing the Darth Vader music when they saw they had to play Pensacola, just because of the history between those two teams in the postseason. So many great games and heartbreakers for Peoria.
Absolutely. It was a great series. I think Peoria played probably the best. Every series they played was the best series in the playoffs, of that round, in my opinion. But yeah, you're right. Goaltending, and that I'm not going to put all the penalty kill last year on the goaltending. Obviously, the penalty kill unit needs to take some of that. But if the goaltending can step up this year and that penalty kill can get a little bit better as we move on through here and get into the teams that finished higher, you'll notice those penalty kill numbers, they were top in the league, and that's why they were so good. But I have Pensacola. They're going to be a playoff team, and it will shock me if they don't make the playoffs. I don't have them on the bubble. I don't have them in the top 3, maybe not even the top 4, but somewhere 5, 6, 7. I could see them there. I don't think they're going to be number 8 where they're possibly going to miss, but yeah, and bringing back, guys like the Wheelan Parrish, I mean, having a phenomenal rookie and another year under his belt, or a full year under his belt. He's coming back. He's learned, and so you got to imagine that that production that he brings to the team is not going to slow down. So next up, I got the Quad City Storm. They had one of their best seasons. Actually, it was the first time the team ever made the playoffs in franchise history. They had a 32-15, 5-4 record, good enough for 5th in the league. They got off to it was a unique start. They dropped their first 2 games of the year, and then they went on an 11-game burner. And they were the top team in the league for a while. And then December kind of, I don't know, was it the holiday blues? They had a rough December. It kind of brought them back down. January didn't really treat them that well either. And they just started seeing them slowly slip down in the rankings. But then as we got close to the playoffs, they turned things around and they made the playoffs for the first time in franchise history, which was awesome. Yep. And they had a great first round of the playoffs. Their first playoff, they won the first round. They took Fayetteville down after dropping their only home game. And they went to Fayetteville and took them down, and they lost to Peoria in another game that went to the limit, but they lost that one 2-1. Their leading scorer last season was Shane Bennett. And it wasn't even close. He had 56 points, 24 goals, 32 assists. Next closest to him on the team was Connor Fries with 39 points. They were 5th in the league, goals for 191, 6th in the league, goals against 157. Credit that a lot to a lot of goaltending going all over, which is probably why they had the way the season went. Is there was never really a solid goaltender. Their goaltenders were always getting called up. That's what I'm getting to say. The goaltending was good, but it wasn't always there, and there was always a change. It seemed like, but yeah. So Connor Fries is coming back. Carter Shinneruck's coming back, and he's a defenseman, but he was second in scoring for the defenseman last year, and I think he was top 5 on the team in scoring. Joe Sova was the only one that scored more. The big losses that we're going to see here is Sova, to the best of my knowledge, is not officially retired, but he is not going to play hockey this year unless he decides he wants to play hockey, I imagine. But as it stands now, he's not at camp. And Shane Bennett is coaching hockey in Ohio. So as it stands now, he is not going to be back. So 2 big losses in Quad City. I mean, that's going to be rough. So, but like I said, they still got guys. They got Logan Nelson, who was a young up and comer last year. He's coming back, and like I said, so they didn't lose too much, but you are going to feel the loss of Sova and Bennett this year in Quad City. So what do you got on Quad City this year, Brad?
Well, here's the thing in the offseason. I mean, we joked early on the offseason. I mean, sometimes in the offseason, a lot of the teams are kind of timid, or some are younger crowd, or depending on the age, may recognize what the Leroy Jenkins reference means. But or Leroy Jenkins. Anyway, But that was kind of mentality all season of we know who we're bringing back. We're going to bring back as much as our core as we can because they went crazy as far as saying we feel really good about where we are as a franchise. There is no reason for us to mess with success. So the good news for Quad City fans is if you like the guys you had last year for the most part, they're all going to be back. So they obviously believe in continuity in a big way there, and that's really reflected on what they're trying to do there.
Yeah. Playoff team?
Absolutely so.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I know they're losing two of their top players, but I just don't, like you said, the core's still there. They're definitely a playoff team, no doubt about it. And I also think maybe this year they might actually best Peoria in the season series. I feel like they're ready for it. They're coming for it. That is my one insane prediction, as some people will call it. People in Quad City won't. People in Peoria will call me an idiot, and everybody else around the league probably doesn't care. But I don't know. I think they're going to give them. They gave them a run for their money last year, but definitely playoff team, definitely. And I could see them making another deep run into the playoffs. They're that good of a team. So next up, moving on. Or did you have anything else to add to Quad City?
No, I think you pretty much covered that.
All right, so Fayetteville, the Marksmen, they were another one of those top teams in the league last year. They had a 40-14 1-1 record, 82 points, fourth in the league, and they were only a couple points out of second. That top four points wise towards the end of the season was very, very close. Second, third, and fourth, each position was 1 point separated before you got to Knoxville, who finished with 88. They ended up losing, as we just said before. They lost to Quad City in the first round, which, in my opinion, was kind of a shocker. I thought Fayetteville would probably get the best of them, but that's the past. We're not going to talk about that anymore. They were, like I said, they were 2 points behind the Havoc when the regular season ended. They were one of the more consistent teams all season long, and the bulk of their schedule was against the Rail Yard Dogs. And they beat them 11 times in 17 matchups. I mean, I looked at the schedule this year. They're not playing each other that many times. They're still going to play each other quite a bit, but not 17. But that was an insane amount of times. Those two fan bases probably hate each other. The teams were hating each other. I mean, it was just insane. But their leading scorer last year, Taylor Best, 51 points, 22 goals, 29 assists, followed by a defenseman, the veteran, Donald Oliveri, 46 points. He had 31 assists, 15 goals. They were third in the league with goals for at 197, fourth in the league goals against 140. Their power play, not the greatest. It was fifth in the league, 19.4% efficient. Penalty kill, sixth in the league, 81.9%. Looking at what they're bringing back Taylor Best. They're bringing I can't talk right now, Brent Moran, who was part of the goaltending duo that I felt was one of the better goaltending duos in the league last year, and Drake Glover. He's another key offensive piece. He's coming back. Another one, to the best of my knowledge, Oliveri is not coming back. He's retired from what I've seen. And then Harrison Harper. I know his numbers weren't great. I've had him on the show before. He is hilarious, and he's one of those guys that is a locker room guy. Everybody loves that guy. I have not talked to a member of the Marksmen that said bad things about that man. And when his short time with the Bulls, he was that way. I mean, and that actually matters. It matters when you lose a locker room guy, whether they're not putting up the numbers, it matters. And so yeah, and that's two defensemen they lost right there. But I don't think I'm worried. Fayetteville is a very well-oiled machine. I think that they're going to do well this year again. So I'll hand it over to you. What's your take on them this year?
Well, and the biggest thing Fayetteville, I think, did well is just the way they used their speed to come out of the breakout. I thought they did very well. I mean, you got guys like, Taylor McCoy coming back. That helps too. And again, like you said, I mean, you got a guy like Drake Glover and, Mac McMahon. I mean, William Blackburn, I mean, is solid too. Now, obviously, a few of these guys, I think, Blackburn was in the ECHL camp, and Jarrett Cupp, who's a pretty good two-way defenseman. He can get out there and get after pretty good too. So yeah, I mean, I really like scoring output they have, and I think I'll be surprised by a late season if Fayetteville doesn't have one of the top scoring teams, because again, I mean, they do a good job of taking advantage of the speed advantage that they have.
Yeah, definitely playoff team, right? Playoff team.
Yes, I'd say so.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind they're going to be in the mix again. They got something to prove. First round exits are always things teams come back, and from what it sounds like, they're like every other team. A lot of guys on ECHL tryouts right now, but you got to assume some of those are coming back. Some of them are going to stick, but the core's still there. And so, yeah, I got them there as well. So next up, we will move on to the Knoxville Ice Bears, who had the best regular season in SPHL history at 42-10-2-2. They were first in the league, but it meant nothing when they lost in the first round to the Roanoke Rail Yard Dogs 2-1. They were just a great team. I don't even really know how to put it. They headed into the playoffs with a full head of steam, but they ran into something that every other team that ran into them besides Peoria just couldn't overcome, and it was crazy. It was an interesting series to watch, but yeah, they got. Let me see. I got to read my notes here. So they took Roanoke down in that first game 4-1. Then they dropped the next two games by a combined 8-2. And so the scoring that Knoxville had all season long disappeared. And all season long, this team too, this is what it showed from how good this team was last year. They battled through. There was a lot of injuries on that team. Their goaltending was at times you didn't even know who the guy was. I remember they came into Birmingham, and forgive me, but I don't remember the guy's name, but he was a starter and I'd never heard of him before. That was his first time showing up, but they were still winning games with these guys.
And those are the guys usually kill you, these goals you've never heard of. It comes in out of nowhere and you can't stop.
That's right. So their leading scorer was Anthony McVeigh. He had 59 points, 21 goals, 38 assists. Dean Balsamo closely followed him, 58 points, 27 goals, 31 assists. And they finished the regular season with the league leading 220 goals and only allowed 136 against, and that was third overall in the league. Their power play third best overall, 22.7 success rate. Penalty kill also excellent, second in the league at 87.7%. Their offseason is one that is not one a lot of Ice Bear fans wanted to hear about. It was announced I think it was middle of August. Jeff Carr, he got a promotion to the Norfolk Admirals.
Jeff Carr, who's obviously a Citizen of the Year nominee for the Roanoke Booster Club, which we'll talk about later on.
Right, exactly. Hey, it got me to buy a shirt, but so they brought in Brent Clark, and Brent Clark, who was already he was an assistant there before. And then he went back to Watertown and won a championship in the Federal League. That was his second as a head coach, winning a championship with the Watertown Wolves. With that also became that exodus, as we talked about, Timofeyev, which still I don't even know actually if Timofeyev's going to stick it. He may end up being in ECHL all year. I haven't heard if he's coming back down, but they lost their captain, Brucato. That's tough. But what they do have coming back is Rasmus Waxening back, and he was a big part of their offense last year. They got Jimmy Peretta. If he sticks, he might end up going back to the ECHL. He only played 17 games last year. He was actually the best rookie goaltender, but he didn't have enough games to qualify for that last year. But when he is a part of that team, he is a brick wall in net. And so they got him coming back. One more loss, Jason Price. I still not official, unofficial. In the SPHL, it's not like the NHL. You don't get these official big retirements. But Jason Price, who was like the most amazing defenseman last year, he was the defenseman of the year, had all kinds of points. Huntsville fans, plug your ears while I talk him up. I know you're still a little upset about that, and rightly so. But yeah, he's gone. He's not going to be a part of Knoxville this year, for sure, from what I'm told. But still, this team, I don't know. This team is one of my teams I'm in question with this year because a lot of big pieces are gone. New coach.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where are you at on this team?
I think you may see, as with any new coaching staff, you may see a lull for about a month or so of, the biggest thing you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have like a 5-15 start of your season. That's right. The thing you don't want. So the big key for Knoxville is, this thing I say all the time about a playoff hunt is, you can't win, you can't get a playoff spot, win a playoff spot in October, November. You sure as heck can lose it. So the biggest thing and regardless of, what Knoxville's goals are, is it to win the President's Cup? Is it to be a top 4 team? Whatever. I mean, you need to be in a decent place when we get January 1st. So, it's the biggest key is just adjusting. And I think for that reason, you noticed, ever since the coaching change was made in Knoxville when Brent Clark, a majority of guys they signed were guys who played for him in the SPHL. So that was probably by design.
Yeah, and it was announced today that the captain of the team is going to be McDonald, who was the captain of the Watertown Wolves. But he won a SPHL championship in Pensacola with Brent Clark when Brent Clark was a player. So it's not like he's, a young FPHL player coming in, and he's got the experience. And then I think their other captains is their alternate captains Balsamo and McVeigh. Yep. But yeah, so I don't know, where do you got them finishing this season out?
They're probably fifth right now.
Yeah, playoff team. I can't see the only team in the league that has never missed the playoff missing the playoffs this year, and so I got them somewhere in there. I might have them around 6 or 7, just to be different than you. I'm going to put them lower, but it's going to be interesting to see, and I might take this all back, and I may be like, well, I was wrong, and they may be a top team in the league again. But I feel like with all the changes going on this year, they'll still be a playoff team, just not quite as red hot as last year. But teams make fools of me every single week. So that's it for the Ice Bears. Next up, we will move on to the Huntsville Havoc. They were the second place finishing team in the league last year in the regular season at 41-13-1-1. And they took care of Evansville in the first round of the playoffs, and then they got swept by Roanoke, which was another shocker that Roanoke pulled off. I don't know that Huntsville was ready for the physical play. I know the few times I watched them, they when they get taken in to the physical style of game last year, it would knock them off of their game because they're a really quick run and gun team. But they still were very sound defensively. But I feel like maybe they were just, I don't know. It was an outmatch. They were outmatched, obviously. But anyways, they have their leading scorer was, or let me see. I'm messing myself up here. But so no, I was on the right track. But I forgot to mention they swept Evansville, but we already heard that earlier when we were talking about Evansville. So their leading scorer last year, the veteran, 10-year veteran, Sinukovic, he led the team with 70 points. The old man's getting it done. He's younger than me. It feels weird saying old man, but 45 assists, 25 goals. And that was good enough for third overall in the league, actually. And coming in second in scoring was Jacob Barber, who had 60 points, 29 goals, 34 assists. You go through this roster and you look at the top 10 in scoring last year, there was a lot of Havoc players. So they weren't having a problem with that. They got 194 goals. They were fourth overall in scoring. They only allowed 124 goals against, which was the best in the league, which is one of the reasons Hunter Borva was the goaltender of the year. Their power play was at 16.8%. Not a very good power play. Shockingly enough, with all that firepower, they were sixth best in the league. Their penalty kill was fourth best in the league, but that penalty kill, and I imagine it's going to be the same this year, was one of the most aggressive I've seen. They were not afraid to take that puck and run to the other side of the rink. They had 11 shorthanded goals on the season. One other thing I kind of got a note that I think I kind of glanced over earlier was Dutulo this is his last season as the head coach of the Havoc. So he announced that he's not leaving Huntsville.
He'll be there. It just won't be behind the bench.
Yeah, he's going to be the
which sometimes but how many times we say someone ends up coming back to help out. So
he's going to be the general manager, I believe.
Right.
Is what they
so it almost
said.
sounds like it's
He's still gonna be in town, but he's been there for a long time. Brought him 2 championships. There wasn't a lot of turnover on this roster from last season. They're bringing back Piacentini, Nukovic is coming back, Rob Dare's coming back, Reginato, Barber, they're all back.
For the most part, Nolan Kaiser is.
Yeah, Nolan Kaiser has retired. He didn't leave Huntsville though. These guys aren't leaving. They love Huntsville. It's a great city.
And that's when because you see this in other parts of the country, and this one thing you're seeing this in part of the country is guys who come down here to play hockey and they say, you know what, I'll just stay here.
I'm sick of the snow. That's what they all tell me.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing players say is, you know what, I love it. I can go to practice in the morning and I can go play golf in February.
Yeah.
Who's going to say no to that? So.
Right. And then the other guy that they lost is Bauer Neudecker. He spent a lot of time in the ECHL, but when he was in Huntsville, he was a threat to score. 35 games, 33 points. So he's going to be missed on that team too. But I mean, like I said, the core of Huntsville has been the core of Huntsville for so long. What do you got? What do you got on them this season? Missing the playoffs, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, they were a team last year. The big thing with them losing was that last year was that how many times they were the team that you didn't want to face in the playoffs because you had so many guys who had experience and and are used to doing things the Havoc way. You know, so that's why it was. I mean, you better bring your lunch pail and a hard hat when you face those guys, especially in playoffs, because they have a culture there, and if you're not going to fit in that culture, you won't last long there.
Definitely.
And when you have a fan base that is passionate there, and every fan base in this league is passionate, I want to be careful about how you say that, but this is a more hockey savvy fan base just because of its location. You're not far from where the Predators are terribly, and you've got a lot of longevity with this franchise there. So it's a fan base that's very demanding of success there too. So
they're another team that's
to do things a certain way.
They've been around just like Knoxville forever. Mm-hmm. And so, but definitely playoff team. Wouldn't be surprised to see them top 2, top 3 somewhere. Same thing. I don't see a lot of fall off with this team this year. What do we got next? Next up, we got the team that took them down in the playoffs, Roanoke Rail Yard Dogs, the Dirty Dogs. So 8th in the league on the bubble. A lot of people didn't even think they belonged in the playoffs, but 23, 24, 4-5. Didn't even have a winning record. Who in the heck thinks they're going to do anything in the playoffs, right? They ultimately ended up losing to Peoria in the finals. They were on the playoff bubble all season, and they hit a really, really rough patch during the season when they dropped 9 games in a row between February 25th and March 18th. Then they busted off 5 straight wins, and then they were headed into the playoffs cold. They headed in losing. But they showed up. They took Knoxville down, number 1. Then they went to Huntsville, took number 2 down. Then went to Peoria and gave them a run for their money. Almost took it to 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, overtime beat them, and their season was over. But what a crazy year for those guys, led by their leading scorer, Mac Jansen, with 60 points, 29 goals, 31 assists, followed by Jeff Jones, 50 points, 18 goals, 32 assists, 7th in the league in goals for, and they were in the finals. I need to just keep saying that, but 176 goals, 181 against, 8th in the league, 7th power play and 7th best power play in the league at 16.6, but they had a good penalty kill, 3rd in the league at 85.3. Jansen, Jones, CJ Stubbs, Matt O'Day, they're all coming back. So this team is basically keeping their core minus their captain, Travis Armstrong, who retired, but they're keeping their core. What do you got with this team?
I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're a top 3 or 4 team, but I think they're in. I think what a run like they had last year does is it says, hey, look, when everyone buys in, this is what can happen. So are you on the bus? Or are you getting off type thing? And, now I think now the double-edged sword to that is, I mean, does that raise the expectations of your fan base thinking we were almost won the whole thing last year? And, if this team starts 3-0, like, what the heck? Was last year a flash in the pan, or was it the real deal? So I think there's a bit of pressure, I think, on Roanoke this year, because there's probably that shadow there of, was last year the real deal, or was it just getting high at the right time? Because but obviously, the biggest thing is just that thing you hope is that, because they was a franchise like many others in this league, was a fresh reset when they resumed hockey there. So the thing you hope is that just the energy, enthusiasm you built off that run and the interest you can build off of that. And obviously the whole Dirty Dogs thing was something that the fans just ran with there. And I think, and there's no telling, did that really motivate those guys? No one's going to really say if it really did or not. There's things, athletes are notorious for, they're not going to really be upfront sometimes about, did this really make you mad or not? Yeah. So, but it was something that the fans definitely got excited about. So, if they hadn't already, they should do like minor league baseball. You have minor league baseball teams that have like the dirtiest car in the parking lot, gets a free car wash, maybe have a dirty dog night where
they got the jerseys. They got a specialty jersey, dirty dog jersey.
Yeah, but bring it. Hey, it's the smelliest dog that shows up here gets a free dog wash.
That's right. That's right. Little did Jeff Carr know that he started something all new in Roanoke by just a short 30-second interview. But it's forever going to be etched in SPHL history. But yeah, I got this team on the bubble. I'm not sold. I know it sounds stupid, right? But I am not sold on this team. I got them on the bubble. They're one of those teams that I won't be surprised if they make it. Won't be surprised if they miss it. Like I said, I convinced myself Birmingham's making it. Somebody's got to be out. But yeah, like I said, won't be surprised if they're in. Won't be surprised if they're out. But when you keep your core back like that and they've seen what can happen, like you said, I think the beginning of the season is going to tell us a lot about this team. So that's that on the Rail Yard Dogs. Next up, we will go to the President's Trophy champions to close out this preview, the Peoria Rivermen. They finished third in the league in the regular season at 38-11-3-4. They got off to somewhat of a slow start last year, found that next gear, and they were near the top of the league standings all year. They were number one at 1 point or 2 points or 3. I don't remember. Their playoffs, they went the hard way through the playoffs, though. The first and second round, they went the full 3 games, but they managed to pull it off. And then even when they won the championship, they couldn't do that easy. They went into overtime. They were all tired. If anybody's missing it, you need to go back and listen to when I had a couple of those guys on at the end of last season. They were talking about how tired they were. And just the story of that final goal scored by J.M. Pietrowski is a good story. But anyway, so ultimately Pietrowski scores a minute 6 in at 2 overtime. They win the President's Trophy. Finally breaking that curse. It's tough to say curse, but they're always right there. And I know a lot of Peoria fans felt cursed. But when you look at some of these other teams that have in other leagues, the Maple Leafs.
Look, man, I live in the state of Georgia, and look, I said last year, man, if Georgia football can snap their streak, anybody can.
Yeah, right. Last year was all about the Braves, the Bulldogs, and the Rivermen. But their leading scorer was the league MVP last year, Alec Bear, 80 points, impressive number, 26 goals, 54 assists. Hageman right behind him, 71 points, 28 goals, 43 assists. They were second in the league in scoring goals at 219. They were second in the league with goals against at 126. Shows you they're a well-rounded team. Best power play in the league, 27.9%. Best penalty kill in the league. Tell me special teams don't matter. They had the best special teams units in the league, and it carried into the playoffs. With where they got players this way, I don't even really know where to start. They're essentially bringing everybody back. They have some guys up on call-ups. Bear just got released back from Iowa, I seen, so he should be on the opening night roster. They picked up Ben Churchfield to back up Levine and net. I know he played in Vermilion County last year, and you guys are like, oh, that guy let a lot of them in. But this is a different team. defense in front of him, whole different team. Churchfield is a solid goaltender. So I don't think that you're going to miss a lot, but it's tough because the guy he's replacing is Jack Barry, who is the MVP of the playoffs. And it's tough. He's playing in England for the, I didn't even write it, Nottingham Panthers. He is in the EIHL. And then if Lord Anthony Grissom doesn't come back, he is not only the coolest name in the sport, he is also a very solid defenseman. If he doesn't come back down from the ECHL, they're going to miss him. But other than that, this team is the same team they were last year, essentially. What do you got on Peoria, Brad?
They'll challenge for the championship again this year. Because now I think, and I also think now you're in the case where you wonder now with that pressure's off now. That monkey is off your back. Okay, where you guys can? Now you wonder if they're going to be more laid back, and if you got to face them, that could be a dangerous thing because these guys, you have no pressure now. And everything. Another thing to watch too is, Alec Hageman did apparently have elbow surgery in the offseason, so it's going to be interesting to see if his recovery is impacted or is he going to have to feel things out early on with that too. But that's a good point about Jack Barry because in the postseason he was the rock for them in goal. They kind of, and that was really a gutsy move by John Guitrudel up there to kind of, because Eric Levine was your mainstay, and all of a sudden to make that switch in the postseason, and it worked.
Yeah, it was the right call. I don't know if you can ever question that coach's decisions. John Guy is just. He's got it figured out.
Your guys.
But I'm with you. I think this team, they like you said, they don't have that pressure anymore, and they can be scary good because now they can just go out there and not have to worry about. Players always say they don't hear that stuff in the background, but they do, and they don't have to worry about it. They got it done. So now they can just go out there, play the game, have fun, and go for back-to-back. I have them again finishing top of the league, somewhere top 3 and challenging for a cup again. But so that's it. Then that wraps up our season preview. I'm excited for hockey. I hope you are. It's
a game this weekend, and and take someone new with you.
Yeah, that's right. So I will. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I think that's it. I think we have accomplished everything we wanted to accomplish here today, and we will let you guys go on that note and look forward to this season going. Everybody go out, have fun, enjoy that the season's back. I know other leagues are already going, but we don't care about them. We're all about the SPHL. And go out there, be loud, be proud. Let your guys let them guys on the ice know that that you're happy to have them back because it does matter out there. And as always, come to us. Come to Field Pass Hockey for all your information. We're going to have, we got game recaps. We got live coverage. You can listen to a lot of markets in there, not just in the SPHL if you do listen to those other leagues. But yeah, come to Field Pass Hockey. And
in the photo galleries, we've got photographers covering most of the teams in the league this year. We're excited about that. So our photographers do great work, so be sure to check those photo galleries out too.
Absolutely. So I will leave you guys with that, and I will see you all next time.
Sounds good.
You've been listening to the Inside the SPHL podcast. Got a topic you'd like discussed? Follow James on Twitter @FPHBulls. For the latest news on the SPHL and the rest of minor league hockey, download the Field Pass Hockey app, now available in the Apple and Android app stores.